The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod and we're coming to you live from the Warner Center in Woodland Hills, California. This is the home for Autism Live. It is also the home for the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. I'm so excited because we have so much to cover today. I don't have enough time, but we're going to be with you live for the next 2 hours. Part of it's going to be pre-recorded, but we're mostly going to be live, and we're going to be covering autism from a 360-degree perspective. We always enjoy your input. We love to hear from you, your thoughts, your feelings, your concerns, all of that. In fact, the entire show, we really want it to be interactive. So Samantha is going to show you some of the different ways that you can connect with us. While she does that, I'm going to remind you that our homepage is autism-live.com. When you go there, there's a lot of things to do. If you click on the triangle that's on the computer screen, it'll start the live show or the most recently recorded live show. If you go to the side, there's a series of white boxes. If you put your cursor in, I got to tell you a little bit about what's going to happen today and the coming week. So this morning, we've got the live show. And normally we have Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh live. Unfortunately, we do not have her live today, but we are going to play an oldie but a goodie in just a few minutes. I've got a couple of things I got to cover before that. Then when that is over, we have a live Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. 2 guests, count them 2. Vince Redman is going to be here with us. He's a licensed marriage and family therapist that used to do therapy, ABA therapy with kiddos, and now he's a licensed marriage and family therapist, so he gets it from both sides of the equation. Talk with us today about summer schedules and how it really, everybody else is going, yay, it's summer, it's so exciting. And for those of us in the autism community, it's like, it's summer, what am I doing? My whole schedule just changed, my kid's gonna freak out. Vince is gonna talk to us about that, because part of it is that we freak out, and that's real, and we don't need to apologize for that, but he'll help us to know what to do about that. And then after we have Vince, as if that's not enough goodness, and we do have some in the news for you as well, but Kurt Manneke is going to be with us again. He is the author of Smile and Succeed for Teens. It's a book about how to help our kids to deal with the social world. It's written for neurotypical kids, but it's so good for our kids that are on the autism spectrum that Temple Grandin said this is the book that all of our teenagers on the spectrum should be reading. Well, Kurt was on our show a couple of months ago. We talked about the book. I got very excited about it. And what he's done now is come out with the parent companion guide so that your teen is reading the book and then you have a companion guide to know what they're reading and how to follow up on it. It is fabulous. So he's going to be with us a little later on with Nancy Alspaugh Jackson to talk about that. And then we've got more stuff on top of that as well. But a couple of housekeeping things before we get to Ask Dr. Doreen. I want to bring your attention to a couple of political things, and then I want to try to get a couple of questions answered, but we're going to do this as quickly as possible without being rude because we want to get to Ask Dr. Doreen. So last week, since we were last with you, HR 2902 was proposed in the House of Representatives. And this was proposed by Representative Jared Huffman, who is from California, state representative. But it has many sponsors, and I'm going to read you their names because this is exciting, you guys. It is an amendment to Part B of IDEA, the legislation that helps us to be able to get the services that we need for our kiddos. You know that we just had a Supreme Court decision that said it cannot be de minimis, that it has to be more than just parking our kids and expecting a little bit of progress. The expectation and this is what the Supreme Court has handed down. We're waiting on another decision about IDEA from them. But for now, they have said it has to be substantive and has to show that is moving them forward, making progress. Well, part of the problem that IDEA has always had is that it never had full funding. Well, Jared Huffman has put forth HR 2902, which requests full, hold your breath, full funding for IDEA. Now, we can talk about, is this an uphill climb? Is it going to happen? Let's get behind it. Let's tell these representatives how much we want to see this happen. Let's shower with love Representative Huffman, along with Representative David McKinley. I should say that Huffman is a Democrat from California, but David McKinley is a Republican from West Virginia. Representative Timothy Waltz is a Democrat from Minnesota. David Reichart is a representative from Washington, and he is a Republican. Kurt Schrader is the representative from, I believe he's a Democrat from Oregon. And Representative John Katko is a Republican from New York. If you live in any of those states, I would ask you to please get a message out to these representatives today. Let them know that you stand with them. If you don't live in one of these states with one of these representatives, I would ask you to send an email to your representatives right now and say, get on this bill, vote for this bill. Here's why it's important. We have learned through the last few months that they live and breathe by what their constituents write to them and say. This is one to get excited about. The possibility of full funding for IDEA makes my head spin. Let's all celebrate this and show some love to these folks and tell other people to get on this bandwagon. At the same time, it is important to know that right now, some decisions are potentially coming to fruition about healthcare. If you are concerned about healthcare, and if you are a person in the autism community, then you should be concerned about healthcare. I think no matter which side of the aisle you're on, we all have a right to know what's being discussed and what they're voting on. Please speak to your senators and let them know that what's important to you and that you'd like to see what's important to them before they vote on it. I think that that's reasonable. But whatever your feelings are about healthcare, it's all going down. In the next 2 weeks, it's all going down. They need to get a decision on this, I believe, before the 7th of July, that is their last date to get a decision about this. So let your senators know what your feelings are, whatever they are. But that's that's what I have to say on that, as Forrest Gump says. We have a couple of questions that came in before we get to the Ask Dr. Doreen. Somebody wrote in and said, is there a place in Denham Springs, Louisiana that my 12-year-old grandson can attend? And I want to say to you, yes. I'm so excited because not only is there a place in Denham Springs, but it is a center for the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. And I've been there. I've met the staff. My son has been there. It's amazing. It's a place that's only been in existence for a little less than a year, and it's gone through a flood in that time, but it's going strong. It is open and going strong, and it's a perfect place to be able to take your 12-year-old grandson. I want to encourage you to go to forautism.com, click the locations tab. You will see Louisiana. Go to the Denham Springs one. You will see that it has the phone number there. But really, to get started there, you don't have to talk to the folks at Denham Springs. You just need to either call the 800 number that's at the top of the page on centerforautism.com, or click on, right around there, there's a thing that says New Patient Portal, I believe is what it's called. Click on there and you can start to fill out the information so that your 12-year-old grandson can go to the center there and make tremendous progress. For everybody who thinks, oh, that's just for the little ones, it is not. For 12-year-olds, there is so much progress that can be made. They get an individualized program, so definitely check that out. I also wanted to say that somebody wrote in and said, my son is 7 and is very hyperactive and has a lot of refusals with me and his dad. He is now following a morning routine and earns the iPhone. I'm going to sneeze. I apologize. And now earns... Excuse me. And I'm so sorry, so loud. Okay. He earns the iPhone for 5 minutes. How do I start to make his schedule longer? Right now, it only takes about 30 minutes. Also, he kicks and screams when we try to put him in timeout and doesn't sit in his chair. What else can we use when he is extremely rude to one of us or breaks something? I want him to learn that his behavior has consequences. He broke my husband's phone 2 weeks ago when he threw it when he was mad. Thanks for your suggestions, and I love the show. Now, normally I would say is that we take time and we extend it by the teeniest amounts of increments so that people don't notice that. So, for instance, it might, and it works both ways. If you have a kid that you want them to wait, you want to teach them how to learn how to wait. We had the jargon term baseline last week, and I want to talk about that in a second. But so you take a baseline of how long can they wait, and it might be 3 seconds. Right? That's a reality. So you give yourself 3 seconds and you have them wait 3 seconds and you give them the reward, right? Well, then the next thing that you do is make them wait 3.5 seconds. And if the reward was big enough and you gave it on a regular basis, they will wait the 3.5 seconds. It works the same way with this. So you've got him doing a 30-minute thing and he gets a reward. Do that for like a week so that everybody gets comfortable, that he knows he's getting the reward and you know that he's doing the thing and you know that you've got that, right? Then, add one teeny tiny little thing to the morning routine that takes maybe less than 15 seconds for him to do. And maybe you have to up the reward a little bit. Maybe you say to him, hey, we're going to add this one little thing, but you're going to get an extra, I'm going to give you an extra minute on the phone, right? And so they go, oh, okay, because they know, they trust you at this point. I do this, you give me something good, woohoo. And then you just very slowly ratchet it up and you continue to make it worth the reward. If at any point you see that you get pushback, you've got to either go back to the last thing that worked or make the reward bigger. At some point, when you get to the point when you've got the whole routine the way you want it and it's all run-of-the-mill and it's all working, then you want to slowly see if you can ratchet back on the reward. But the truth of the matter is, if it's 5 minutes of iPhone, nobody's hurt by him being on 5 minutes of iPhone, right? And it will take care of itself down the road. He's not... Honestly, I was going to say he's not going to go off to college and still need a 5-minute reward for doing his routine, but the truth of the matter is he might, and that college students do that all the time. It's not socially inappropriate. So I would say that small, teeny, tiny increments, smaller than you think are possible, gets it done whenever it involves time. See, I told you we were going to run out of time. They're telling me I've got 2 minutes. But the other part of this is that I so appreciate the part where you say, I want him to learn that there are consequences. Because that is ingrained in all of us. We were all raised this way. Well, if he does something wrong, he needs to learn that there are consequences for that. And he will learn that there are consequences for it, but we're used to the idea of punishment and timeout. And I would tell you that timeout is a very difficult thing, and almost never without a trained professional there is it possible to do it correctly. And it's hard because they don't, what do you do when they don't want to sit there? I would ask you to upend this conversation and put it in another way. I had a sign that hung in my bathroom for 10 years that said, reward good behavior, ignore bad behavior. I know it feels counterintuitive. He broke his dad's phone and you don't want to do nothing. But let's be honest, if we follow the rules of ABA, he did that to get a reaction from you. Some reaction. I don't know whether he wanted attention. I don't know whether he wanted to get out of something, but he did something. So we want to turn that on its end. I want to really encourage you to go to ibehavioraltraining.com, and I think it's $10. Pay for the training that's about compliance. You will not be sorry, because it will show you how to get compliance and give him words so that he doesn't throw things, but it will also teach you that when he does throw things to get a reaction, you give a non-reaction. It's like giving a fire no oxygen. It feels horribly wrong. People will criticize you for it and say, you let him get away with that. He didn't get anything for it. But it's a really specific thing. I encourage you, ibehavioraltraining.com. I'm totally out of time, but I just want to say that somebody wrote in and said, hey, thanks for doing the jargon baseline. Now all of the jargon term mysteries are complete. You've made my day. I don't think they're all complete, though. I think we still have work to do, but I'm thrilled that you're excited about that. And now, my friends, it is time. Don't forget, though, we're coming back live with Let's Talk Autism. Great guests, Vince Redman and Kurt Manneke. But first, it's time for Ask Dr. Doreen.
Dr. Doreen Grand-Pichet is the
Dr. Doreen is an expert in autism.
Doreen Grand-Pichet.
Dr. Grand-Pichet.
Dr. Doreen Grand-Pichet.
Dr. Doreen Grand-Pichet is a visionary in the field of autism. Now you can ask her questions on Ask Dr. Doreen. And we're going to jump in with a question. Somebody wrote in and said, my Asperger's 14-year-old son has sensory issues while cleaning his teeth and taking a bath. When he cleans his teeth, he says his ears and head itch him. And when he bathes, he feels like he is in prison, sometimes gasping for breath. And what can we do to help him?
Yeah, you know, it's fascinating. One of the things that has changed in autism, perhaps, or we're learning more, is this whole sensory aspect of autism. Of course, in the old days, there used to be a lot of children who would have very significant sensory problems and would really, I remember one of the early diagnostic criteria, and I'm not sure, DSM-3 maybe, was insensitivity to pain. And it just, you know, a lot of the kids would just fall and injure themselves and not have any sensation of it. Now we look at sensory issues and they vary. You know, cleaning your teeth, I can imagine, would be somewhat of a sensory problem. It's understandable, but he's also saying that it hurts his ears or itches his ears. And I don't know if he has allergies. You really might want to have an allergist take a look and see if he has allergic reaction to anything, or if he's just, you know, to pollen and so on, has slight allergies. Because then if you're on an antihistamine or some sort of medication for allergies, it might resolve that altogether, because itching is not a common issue when it comes to sensory dysregulation in our kids. Right. Itching could very well be a real allergy. So let's first of all rule that out. Now, once you've done that, I would say that you just need to get very sensitive toothpaste, Sensodyne, I guess, and very soft bristles, and allow him to do the best he can with it. And I don't think that beyond that you can do too much. In regards to bathing, I think that, I'm not sure, I understand he's still taking a bath. Perhaps you would try a shower instead, and perhaps you would give him a handheld shower so that he has control over where the water goes, so that he doesn't feel like he's suffocating in the bath water. I don't know if the heat is too much for him. Generally, if it's too high of a heat level, then we gasp for air. So just play with those things. I mean, these are essential activities for him. They're hygiene activities. So you do need him to continue to do them. Making them a little bit easier this way, giving him control. Generally, if you give someone control over something that's uncomfortable, they do much better with it. Discomfort tends to increase when it's unpredictable. So, you know, that's why really good dentists, for instance, will tell you everything they're about to do, and that helps because you're prepared a little bit. So if he's holding a handheld shower, for instance, it'll help him because he will actually be able to put the water on himself and remove it, rather than being in a bath where you're stuck. And then I would reward him more, you know, increase your reinforcers for things that are difficult. So these are difficult tasks for him, so make sure he has a high reward after doing these tasks.
Wonderful. Great, great advice. And then always, we love it when you guys write in and let us know what you did and how it worked and what the results were, because, and I think the audience loves that too, the rest of the audience, because we learn from each other. So it's a great opportunity. Moving on to another question. Good morning, ladies. I have a teenage son with autism. If he is mad at me, usually over something really minor, he completely ignores me the rest of the day. No eye contact, no response. It's like he can't get over whatever little thing happened. What can I try to improve communication and thanks?
Right. I noticed that you skipped one that was just telling you what a wonderful show you have.
I did skip that because I wanted to address that, and I wanted you to see how much people love the show. But
No, that's wonderful. Yeah,
we-
it's lovely to see that, and it's lovely to see people writing in from other countries,
Yes.
such as India. That's wonderful.
and we totally appreciate.
We do.
We, like everybody else, love the reinforcement. And
we need the reinforcements.
And
we do.
and honestly, because this, I have said to our audience, sometimes it feels like I call this my padded room sometimes, right? Because there is some padding, and that sometimes it feels like we are in here by ourselves.
Oh yeah, of course.
And we are always thinking about all of you and hoping that you're getting what you want out of this, but we don't know for sure unless
That's
you tell
right.
us.
It's true.
So-
I don't know how you do this, actually. I was thinking about it. Wednesdays are pretty fun. I mean, after
Yeah.
this show, it's of course Nancy, and Nancy's
Yes.
always fun to
Yes.
have. I can talk to Nancy for hours,
Right.
and I wouldn't even know how that passes. But it is a tough job to be doing this 3 times a week. It's very tough.
It is, but it's also a great gift to me.
It absolutely is.
And I
yes.
get to meet people I would never have met.
It's fabulous.
And I get to learn things that I don't know that I would have learned.
Right.
And it's different every day. And
Right.
So don't feel bad for me.
That's very nice. Good, thank you.
It's wonderful.
So going back to this question, I never mean to make an issue small, but I love this issue. It's sort of a nice thing to have, is that it shows how intelligent and sophisticated your son's thinking is, that he holds a grudge. I mean, holding a
Right.
grudge is actually a kind of a very sophisticated cognitive factor, because you really have to remember something that occurred that might have been minor, that offended you. And usually we hold grudges not over things that are very direct, but more abstract things
Right.
that somehow hurt our ego. So in that sense, it's kind of a nice thing that your son is doing that. I mean, I would say the best thing you can do in this kind of scenario is probably, if something like that happens, make sure that you don't address it. Don't try to go up and beg him to forgive you or pay attention. Don't do any of that. But rather engage in something extremely fun that he loves, that he loves, and do it very overtly so that he's aware that you're doing it. And I think he might engage with you then.
Yeah.
So it's kind of entice him.
Absolutely. We've had a little bit of this behavior with someone I know
Yeah.
and love. And
This is a very typical, everybody does this.
yeah, it's horrifying when it happens because it doesn't feel good. But I've tried to remember, I think we've had a question like this before. I've tried to remember that it is a quality problem.
Right.
And
it's a typical, it's not just
Yeah.
in our kids, This
Right.
is something that a lot of adults do.
Yeah.
Sometimes people need a longer period of time to
Yes.
cool off.
And honestly, I feel like sometimes with Jem, I feel like more and more I get better of going, okay, what is the function?
Yeah.
That's almost the first thing that occurs to me. And that sometimes he just needs time.
Yeah.
And he will even say to me, I'm going to need some time to cool off with this.
Right.
And I'm like, all to the good, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I appreciate, because I
Absolutely.
feel that way sometimes. I'm
Right.
upset about it. There's nothing you can say in this moment. I
Right.
just need a moment, that's fine. And
Yeah.
I really like to honor that. There are other times that I feel like he is doing that just to get my attention. And those
See,
are the ideal times, like you said, I go and do something fun and then he gets right over it.
That's right. So therefore, whether it's either a condition, the best thing to do is just to ignore and move on with your life. It's one of those things that our kids learn if they see. It's not an issue when they do it to you. I mean, we as parents can handle this kind of stuff, right? Because nothing is about us; it's about them.
Right.
But when it comes to the point where the individual does this with peers, and then peers just walk away and they're like, what's wrong
Right.
with him?
Yeah.
That is not good, because now it's affecting his social life.
Right.
And so, but it's one of those natural things that happens where if your teenager actually wants to have friends, he will learn that doing that type of behavior is affecting his friendships. But for now, I would say this is how you handle it. You move on. You just move on and you do something fun. I remember when my kids were little, I used to do that all the time, no matter, even if they were holding a grudge or not. Like immediately, as soon as some sort of tough situation or argument was, once it had escalated and was now over, I would immediately divert to some other fun activity, because you really want to teach your children to move to the next session
Right.
of life, you know.
Moving on.
Move on.
Moving on, which reminds me that I keep reminding our folks that the last Wednesday of the month we're having Byron Katie on the show.
Right.
A great,
was gonna
great
ask you about
person for learning how to move on off of something when you get stuck on an emotion or a page that you just can't seem to get off of, and making it productive. Great, great things. She will be with us on that last Wednesday of the month. All right, moving on to this next question, which unfortunately I fear is all too common in terms of the situation. Hello, Shannon and Dr. Doreen. I'm currently going through the process of getting a divorce. My daughter is almost 4, and she has high functioning ASD and sensory processing disorder. She has started showing some unwanted behaviors that I'm having trouble dealing with. One is increased aggression towards her younger brother, and the other is urinating on my furniture and carpet. I know a lot in her environment has changed, but how do I make the transition more smooth for her and stop the unwanted behaviors? Her father also is not calling or seeing her that often, which is causing her lots of distress. And I'm also seeing a huge increase in her self-regulating behaviors. She's jumping a lot, rocking, vocal stereotypy, and flapping. Any advice would be great, and they have sent an email so that we can get back to them, which is why I'm not sharing the question on the live feature.
Right. Wow.
Yeah.
So I'm really sorry. That's a very difficult time that this parent is going through. I'll give some basic advice, but I really think that more importantly, this is a time where you need some support. That would be my first piece of advice, is try to get some help right now, because whatever advice I give, it's going to really require a lot of time. So you need to have an individual who's helping you carry out all of this sort of stuff. And I would imagine you need some support yourself anyway. But, these are behaviors that cannot be handled with a reprimand here or there, or an occasional change in consequence, or an occasional change in antecedent. It's more or less someone has to be with her, most of her waking hours. So she's 4 years old, she's high functioning, and she has some sensory processing issues, which a lot of our kids now do. She's showing increased aggression towards her younger brother, and she's also urinating on the furniture and the carpet. Let's not make the assumption that all of this is due to the divorce. Let's just identify the function of each behavior. Okay. So separately, you will need to see, when does this aggression towards her younger brother occur. And these are completely separate behaviors, so we will look at each one individually. So you want to see when the aggression towards the younger brother occurs. You immediately want to look at the antecedents and consequences when that occurs. So for instance, she aggresses towards her brother when he takes away a toy. That's a common scenario. So then she's actually aggressing towards him because he has taken something away from her. So she's trying to get that object back. So you would need, in that scenario, the intervention would be that she should be prevented from doing the aggression, but taught how to ask appropriately, and then given a chance at the toy. So, if you can't do that, then the situation needs to be avoided altogether. In other words, she should not be allowed to be in the same room playing with the brother, so that could occur. So every scenario has its own type of function, and that's very important. Let's assume she aggresses towards the brother when she wants attention from you. That's another thing, and we have to think, why is that happening? Well, every time she hits her brother, you come out to give her and the brother some attention. Perhaps you give the brother good attention and her bad attention. It doesn't matter. Attention is attention. And so she's learned, hey, if I want mom to pay attention, all I need to do is hit my brother. You really have to identify the function. And yes, we tend to act up when we are under new circumstances, like dad not being around, but we also have to adjust. And so it doesn't matter that you have to leave that alone for a minute and not focus on the fact that the divorce is happening, but really identify the function as it occurs that moment and figure out how to deal with it. And the same thing also for the urination. When is she urinating on the furniture? Is it right after something is taken away, right after a demand is placed? Is it when she has nothing else to do? Whatever the reason is, you then produce an intervention based on the reason. And that's why most of these types of behaviors are easy to eliminate when you have someone with the child most of the time. So that's why therapy is so important if you have a therapist, because the therapist will block and prevent most of these things from happening to begin with. And the therapist also gets to identify those kind of antecedent cues and can identify, oh, she's about to urinate. And so that means I know she urinates when she needs a break, or I'll teach her how to ask to go to the potty, or I'll teach her how to ask for a break, or maybe it's time for me to reinforce more, or those types of things. So each of those behaviors that are occurring, you just need to identify the functions separately. This is a situation where you have enough going on in your life that I really do recommend you have help.
Yeah.
If you can get help from a professional, that's absolutely the best thing, of course. Someone who's a BCBA or perhaps registered behavior technician, or has a board certification in autism, the BCAT, or some sort of certificate that shows that they know ABA, can easily help you with this. The self-regulating stuff, the jumping a lot, rocking, vocal stereotypy, and flapping perhaps is, kind of regulating her. I don't know. But again, if someone is with her, they will block those types of behaviors, prevent them from happening, and redirect them to more appropriate behaviors.
And can we talk for just a second about if you don't? Because for me, it seems like the danger in this is that, I think it's natural that as human beings we go, well, why is this happening? What triggered this? And then we look at the divorce and we, make that comparison. But for me, I feel like, and tell me if I'm in the wrong neighborhood, but so she's doing things to cope with whatever's happening, right? Mm-hmm. And she's learning from that. And if we don't prevent this, then this will be a thing that she does until she learns that it isn't effective, which could be when she's 42.
Or never.
Or never.
Yeah, and see, something like a divorce, something that's a chronic change. It's not an acute change. It is acute, but then it becomes chronic. It's long term. I see those as background factors. So, for instance, someone who doesn't sleep well, that's one, or someone who's just started a new school, or someone who, there's these factors that affect us kind of in the background and on a longer term. They're not provoking the specific behavior. They're just kind of, they sort of increase or reduce the threshold for us to lose it. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like I'm agitated because this divorce is happening. So I'm at a heightened state of agitation to begin with. So now if you place a demand on me, I'm going to hit my brother. Right. You know what I mean? So you're at a different sort of, your baseline changes because you're more irritated. But you can't change the base, you can't change that background thing. That background thing is there, and we have to acclimate, like you said, we have to get used to that. So what you do is you take the time to teach the individual that this behavior is not okay. Even if you're in a state of heightened agitation, it's just not okay. This is how we communicate. And, you teach an alternate form of communication that's acceptable. And yeah, you're very right, Shannon. I mean, these are the very important times where we have to teach our kids, I know you're stressed out. I know things might be tough, but it's still not okay to behave this way.
Yeah, and give them the better tools in life for them to have a more productive life. We talk about on this show that this show wants to cover autism from a 360-degree perspective, but I feel like you are the expert in the field that really gets it from the 360-degree perspective, that even before when you were saying there are more things we need to know behaviorally, there are more things that we need to know biomedically. And so much of our world is segmented. You have the people who are doing behavior work and they don't want to talk about the biomed, but the parents do.
Yeah, even in the world of behavioral, there's a lot of splits.
Yes.
Not everybody thinks the same. So there's a lot of kind of division there. There's a huge amount of division when it comes to the biomedical issues, for sure. I mean, it's changing as everything does, but for God's sake, I was almost crucified for thinking that biomed is important. Yeah. When was it, 5 years ago?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's just, it's a funny world.
It is a funny world, but we appreciate you, and I think that, from my point of view, I think that you are so amazing because you're constantly interested and curious in all kinds of things. And I think it comes from a place of security that you know what you're talking about. So of course you're curious to know more things.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that comes from confidence, and we appreciate that, because I think a lot of people are so hotly defending their position that they can't hear anybody else.
Oh, and you know, in positions of power, which is very, very sad. I think a few years ago at a national conference, at an ABA national conference, Jane Howard, who's a very high-level behavior analyst, actually showed a video of me where I was speaking with a physician who was doing an interview, and I was basically saying that the medical interventions are very important for some of the children because we need to stabilize them medically and help them feel better so that ABA is actually more effective. And she showed that video and pointed it out as being extremely unethical, because as a behavior analyst I shouldn't be recommending that anybody look at medical interventions. And it's really interesting for me because, and you know, of course she's in a very powerful position to not only influence other behavior analysts but also parents. She has a clinic, she sees patients. And I feel bad about that because I feel like there are so many parents that would be misguided. You can't, you know, this is not just a learned disorder, obviously. It's not like we saw our children learn all these things. We can reverse them, most of the behaviors, but for God's sake, we have children who are, you know, I always use this example, but I have children who have diarrhea 10 times a day, and it's ignored because people say, oh, he has autism. There's nothing to do with it. Let's treat his GI dysfunction.
Exactly.
You know, and it's very important. Like I always say, Shannon, you know, I'm very, very interested in helping on the biomedical side just because I find so many things are overlooked. Our children, so many of our children don't sleep. They really have very poor sleeping habits. Yes, some of it is behavioral generalization. You know, the child doesn't want to go to their own bed or something, but the majority of it is something else. Some of these kids are having seizures, some are just having various sleep disturbance, some are so sensory hyper that they hear everything and it wakes them up. I mean, honestly, and some are just have biochemical imbalances that wake them up. And you don't sleep, that's going to affect every other aspect of your life.
Well, it's just common sense.
Absolutely.
It doesn't
Absolutely.
take, you know, I mean, I don't have to have a PhD to think,
to say that. Yeah.
And I think that a lot of parents come from that point of view and go, well, but if my child isn't healthy, what are we going to be accomplishing? It could be the best learning program in the world.
Exactly how I feel.
But, you know, and I think that's what's refreshing, and we appreciate that you do see it from that 360-degree perspective. And that, you know, the first time I heard you speak and you talked about the whole child,
right,
I just went, oh, you know, this is amazing. I'm so lucky because I was already at CARD when I heard you say that.
Right.
But if I hadn't been, I would have been finding out where your office was to be with your team.
Well, thank you.
Because so few people are talking about that. So we appreciate this time. And we have some questions that have come in the live feature, but I want to take one more that came in earlier this week. From one parent to another, how can I help prepare my son for the upcoming departure of a therapist who has been with him for 2 years? I don't know what the replacement we eventually get along with pending interim reduction in services will ever be able to understand him as well. He gets very, very attached to people. After turning 3 and leaving early intervention, he would ask for his lead therapist for at least another year or 2.
Oh my gosh.
I just don't know how to help him with the transition when I am having a lot of trouble thinking of getting through it myself even.
I know. So this is it's a very difficult thing sometimes for our families. I find this to be the case because, you know, it's funny because initially it's such an intrusion when you have a team of 5 or 6 people at your house all the time, you know, and it's like you don't have a life. It's people are in and out.
Right.
But over years, you actually get so used to not only those people, but just having a team behind you, backing you, helping you, being part of your life, that it's very, very hard to give it up. You know, for your son, some of the things you can do are the following. Just make sure he understands. I mean, the goal here is to make sure he understands that he will continue to be able to have this person in their life, in his life, in some manner. So what I would really recommend, and sometimes what we do here when it's possible, is we will fade off so that the therapist is doing fewer sessions gradually. But then if your child, depending on the age of the child, it sounds like he's older because 3 is a few years ago, but you would want to make sure that they are in contact perhaps on, let's say, Skype, in contact on the phone perhaps. The therapist could, for instance, send small packages. So in other words, as the sessions decrease, the therapist can, on their own time, just call in and say, hi, how are you? Or just Skype in and wave, or maybe send something in the mail so that your son continues to have some form of contact. It may not be physical contact where the person is coming in, but it'll be other types of contact. Yeah. And really, that's the best you can do. And, our children have to experience loss in their lives to some extent. But it sounds like if this is a therapist who's really attached and understands him, then it's probably a nice enough person who will stay in touch. I'm in touch with families of kids and kids that I worked with 20 years ago, more than 20 years ago, and it's really nice. It's very, very nice. So that's something that you could do. I always try to say that there's some benefit to having new people on your team. I just want to touch on that for a moment because you know how when our kids are little, we understand, as parents, we understand everything they say, but no one else does. I remember when my son was little, even I couldn't really understand because he heard so many languages in the house. There was German and English and Farsi, and there were many languages. So he had this, it was hard to understand. It was like sort of a German accent mixed with very rapid speech. It was just a very funny. But the only person who could really understand when he was like 1 or 2 was his sister, Nikki. She understood pretty much. So she had to translate everything he said for a little while. He'd say something and she'd be like, he said, blah, 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 And it was funny, but that happens with our kids, that where they have a therapist who understands everything they're saying, but no one else does.
Right.
And it's important to have new therapists working with our kids because the new therapist is less trained and therefore more resembles reality. Right. Because a really well-trained therapist is going to prompt him, is going to be higher level of reinforcement than the normal environment, whereas a newer therapist will be closer to what he'll experience in the normal environment. So it's always good to have a rotation of therapists. It's tough. I'm not saying it's not easy and it doesn't always work out, but it's not easy. It's tough, but it is for his benefit in the long run, and it's important that you do that. And I know that we depend on these folks. It's hard.
It is hard. They become part of your family, your extended family. And I just want to say as a parent that, I really relate to this question that we had so many therapists, right? But our personal autism whisperer on our team was Peter Farrig. And I get choked up whenever I talk about Peter because, there's probably nothing I wouldn't do for Peter, for what he did for us. Right. But Peter left us a total of 3 times in our 5 years. And each time that he announced that he was leaving to go away, it was like a personal death to me.
Yeah.
And he was, my son.
Because you worry, you're afraid.
It was like being at a cliff, and how will we ever have this with somebody else? And somebody once reminded me, well, there was a period of time when you didn't know Peter Farrig. Yeah. Maybe there's another Peter Farrig that's going to come into your life. And we met lots of other therapists that helped our son along the way. And Peter would come back into our lives and go, look at what has happened with him. And it kind of became a thing with us, a touchstone where Peter would come back in and see the improvement. And even 2 years ago when we were having a school issue and we asked hard to step in and take a look at things, and Peter was the person that got sent because he's had a through line with him. And Jem got to be the ring bearer in Peter's wedding. This is like, Peter is family to me. Yeah. And if you quiet yourself with it and know that this person is not gone for you forever, that you can stay in contact if the person is okay with it. Obviously, it has to be okay on their side. That leave room for the fact that somebody else fabulous is going to come in, because we We had other fabulous
also
people that
true.
I would not have been open to if Peter had been there.
Absolutely.
That added to our team and brought something. And I will tell you, if you need something to get you in the mood to get it, there is the fabulous song from Wicked, For Good, that talks about people coming into your life for a reason and having to leave for a reason, and how they taught you something and they must go,
that's nice.
and you've been changed for good.
Yeah.
It's
That's
a beautiful.
that's in
beautiful-
Wicked?
It's in Wicked.
Okay.
I made a video when Jem graduated from Card, and the song below it is For Good, to talk about all the therapists that came in and changed all of us for good.
Right, absolutely. And you're so right, Shannon. Like, I look back at, I think it was the second au pair that I had when Nikki was a baby. And I cried when her time was over. Like, let me tell you, she was just with us for 6 months. I cried. I mean, she was just like a godsend, you know? And that was a very tough time for me. As first child, and I was working a lot, and it was growing Card, and it was a tough time. And I remember thinking, like, how am I ever going to manage? And then, of course, you do manage. And then, you, as you said, you know, the person who replaced her actually ended up being just as good, if not in a different way, you know, but just as good, and someone who also played a very important role in Nikki's development and in our lives. And after that, of course, we had maybe 10 other people who were just amazing. So I would say it is always, it's our own fears to a large extent.
And it is. Even here, you know, Emily was with us at the beginning of Autism Live, and Emily and I had this working relationship, and when Emily was leaving to go to the NFL Network, I was like, what will we ever do? We'll never survive. I can't ever. And then we
have Kelsey.
Yes, yesterday was
being
Kelby's
such a
1
great-
year anniversary.
No way. Well,
Or this
congratulations,
in the last couple of
Kelby.
days. And I, like, if my life had never had Kelby in it, that would have been a horrible thing.
I know.
So
I agree.
you know, transitions are uncomfortable, but
I agree.
everything is changing always. We just have to get over wanting stasis, right?
That's right.
That's right. So in any case, okay, we had a question coming in the live feature this morning. Our lovely Shannon and Dr. Doreen. I have almost 6-year-old boy who is very smart and is doing great thanks to his ABA. Though his speech has improved a lot, he still does not initiate conversation or interactions. He also does not comment nearly as much as his peers do during the activity. If he's doing something, he usually is singing something. He might occasionally get my attention and tell me something about it, but not often. How can we increase his commenting, tacting, what he is doing and initiating? And thanks a lot, with about 6 or 7 exclamation points.
That's great.
Thank you.
Let me just write notes.
Yes.
So I don't forget. Okay, and then statement question. There's several lessons that are going to be useful to this family. You know, clearly you have some technical knowledge, because you refer to how do we increase his tacting.
You're watching the
No,
jargon. We love it.
So the tacting is basically, for those who aren't familiar with that term, is kind of labeling objects, you know, pointing out the names of things, or identifying things that way. Manding being the first form of communication is kind of requesting. So my assumption is that this child does mand pretty rapidly, frequently. I don't know, because if he or he doesn't, then you also want to increase rapid manding, so requesting for things. But requesting, tacting, you simply model. And the way to do that is you could do it when you're driving, you could do it at the house, whatever it is. You are modeling the frequent labeling, and you're increasing its fluency. So, you know, the way that we do it is, you know, we'll teach the child a series of labels, and then we will increase the speed of it, and we will increase the duration. So I would be flipping pictures, and the child would have to label them very fast. That fluency is a very, very important part of initiation of and maintenance of tacting. So, and then you would also just then increase, you would reward, like for instance, one of the ways that you reward is using a clicker for every tact. Anything that the child labels, you would increase. You would give a click for, and then the number of clicks would equate to some reward. So you generally want to work on just reinforcing and increasing the number of tacts and the duration of tacting. And that's just tacting, that's labeling. That's not necessarily going to increase initiation of conversation. Conversation is quite a different beast, and it involves a lot of different things. One big factor of conversation is reciprocity, being able to exchange. So you also have to kind of teach that, because when you're tacting, you're just labeling. There's a fire truck, this is green, there's the tree, oh, those are just tacts. But when you're having a conversation, I'm basically saying something and then waiting for your reaction. And that exchange is kind of a difficult thing to teach. A couple of our lessons, first of all, we have a huge social conversations section, which is in our social curriculum, which I recommend you look at. Any of these lessons that I'm referring to are, of course, in the skills curriculum. And I really highly recommend that you look into the skills curriculum, because in the social conversation sections there you'll find tons, and I'm not sure if they're the social curriculum or language curriculum, but you'll find tons and tons of lessons that will focus just on conversational speech. For instance, one of the things that we do is this lesson called statements, where you begin with, you'll say something like, I have yellow, and then the child will have something in front of them and they'll say, I have green, whatever it is. And that is just teaching the child, the content doesn't matter what it is, but it's very basic exchange of information. And then you'll take it to more advanced stuff, like I ate, cereal for breakfast, and the child says what he ate, and yesterday I did whatever, and the child says, so it's just an exchange that's parallel, kind of. And then you take it to the next level lesson, which is statement question, and that is kind of like asking each other, saying a statement, and then the child, you have now a rotating question and statement.
So you say to me, I have yellow, and I say, do you like yellow?
Yes, exactly. Or I had breakfast, and I ask, what did you eat for breakfast? So, and these are all written out very, very precisely, because it's kind of an expansion on speech. In fact, as I was saying this, I remembered when I made those names. Like I didn't know how to come up with those names, how to identify those lessons. And there's many more. Like when you get into heavy conversation, then you have to really teach the child to identify facial expression and be able to, for instance, figure out cues as to the interest level. They have to be able to pick a topic that is specific to the people they're talking to. So, you can't go, I would not go to my children, for instance, and have a long conversation about autism, although I do at this point in life, but, I wouldn't when they were younger. And so those types of things are important, but they're more advanced. And, the child is only 6. So at this point, you're really looking at other children who are 6 and the type of interaction and conversation they have. They do identify what everyone wants to talk about. A 6-year-old will know what they can talk to their girlfriends about, what they can talk to the teacher about, that sort of thing. And so it starts to become pretty complex. And I recommend you look at skills. And skills, of course, is skillsforautism.com. You can write it out or use the number 4. Both of them go to the same place, skillsforautism.com. And I think that's really the place to go, because you'll see hundreds of lessons that will work on conversational skills.
Yeah, it's kind of so exciting to read through it once, just to kind of read through what the different topics are, because you will go, oh, immediately I know as a parent you'll go, well, that's a part of what we don't have,
right? And
want to fill in the blanks, and it's crazy good what can happen when we fill in those blanks with a child. Very exciting. So skillsforautism.com. And there's help and support if you need it. And you can always, I love to help people figure out skills, because it's one of my favorite things on the planet.
We skipped a few in the middle, didn't we, love? Jack Riley likes to watch videos about the ABCs, or the ABBCs, as he likes to say. He kept throwing a fit and misbehaving when he wasn't getting what he wanted. We finally decided it was time to turn off the computer. And of course we did that without warning him.
He threw one of the biggest tantrums I've ever seen from him, because he's used to getting his way now, because now that he can say it, we're supposed to reward him. But now he's testing us.
While we are 100% ABA advocates and we believe it is working on our son, there is a little fallout in reinforcing these requests that he doesn't quite understand now, that he doesn't get everything he wants.
Bye-bye. This is completely typical. When requesting isn't something that happens naturally with your child, you want to create as many opportunities to practice the skill. So you reinforce each time they request, because it will increase the frequency they demand. Once the requests are at a rate you want, then you should begin to fade the frequency of reinforcement and teach new advanced skills, such as having the child wait for a desired item or let them know that they must choose something else. These are all life skills. Not every desire will be met, but you are more likely to get what you want if you communicate your wants appropriately.
You want some applesauce, buddy?
Yeah, why don't we put the car over here,
Yeah,
bud?
let's take the car. We're just gonna take a break. Take a break. Take a break. Do you want this? Do you want the car?
Do you want more car?
Settle down. Settle down.
Okay,
Settle
do you
down.
want more car? Okay, and you want applesauce? Okay. Alright, take another bite. One more. There you go.
Nice, that was a good
Okay.
bite too, buddy.
There you go.
Good bite.
Alright. Yeah, I should have warned him before I took it away.
We get reminded all the time. It just works so well.
It does, it really does,
Forget to
yeah.
do it. And
Okay, 10 more seconds and bye-bye car, okay? Bye-bye car. 10 okay. Okay, let me have it. Bye-bye car. No, that's okay, settle down.
Thank you.
Take two bites, please. Do you want the car?
Yes.
Two bites. Good talking.
One. And then
good
two.
job. Good job, buddy.
Good job.
Good job. Good job.
How has mealtime been going with you? Still the same? Still
Yeah, it's
pretty
going well. Yeah. You know what he had last night? Did Cheryl tell you?
No.
We are documenting this because this bite of spaghetti that he's about to take is the first ever meal that Jack Riley has had exactly what Mommy and Daddy are having. With the exception of the cottage cheese. He would eat that too, but we're going slow. I realize it's just spaghetti, and lots of kids probably eat spaghetti, but our kid never did. Not for us, anyway. And now, he's like just a regular kid having dinner with Mom and Dad.
Good boy. Say choo choo. Choo choo. Say here we go. Here you go. All right, make it go down. Go down. Whee! Yay! Good job. Should we build more tracks? Okay, sure. Here you go. Do you want the green one or the blue one?
Green.
I.
What trees?
You want which one?
Yeah.
You want black? Oh, well, none of the ones I offered you. Cool. I like that. I like it. And he's definitely requesting more eating and drinking, which is really good to hear. So I don't know if they want to introduce him to other things. Like, it's up to them. But just the fact that he's requesting to drink is a big deal for him. Hey, Jack, one more minute, okay? Say, okay.
Okay.
Okay. He has an issue sometimes, like inflexibility a little bit, with just the trains in particular. When I'll ask him to come over to do a program real quick, he'll want to clean up the trains up every single time. With the other toys though, like I can call him over, he can take a break, he's totally fine, and then after we're done with that program, he'll go back and he'll play. With the trains in particular, I don't know why he wants to clean them up every single time. So I'll run some programs and we'll see if he has that issue still. Hey, Jack. Good looking. Come here. Yeah! That's such good listening. Good job, mister. What is this? Ling, ling, ling. What are those? that transition was a lot better. Where's Piglet?
Look.
Morning and welcome to Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. I'm Nancy Osbaugh Jackson.
And I am Shannon Penrod.
Hello, Shannon
and
Penrod.
we're just noticing that we didn't do the opening again.
Oh,
Samantha, we didn't do the opening again. We have this great new opening for
okay.
Let's Talk Autism, and we just keep forgetting to
All
do
right,
it.
well,
So
we'll
we'll
have to
do it in
remember
a
next time.
second.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I'm distracted. I'm like, the
Okay.
opening. Anyway.
You're ready for that.
Anyway, I do. I love the new
Yeah.
opening, and Samantha did such a good job with it, and I want to showcase what Samantha does. So anyway, but we just keep forgetting. Oh, well, it is the thing. Anyway, I'm good. How are you?
I'm good.
I'm hearing myself, so I'm unplugging. But we got a lot of show today. We got
Yes.
big show today. We got Vince Redmond coming up in just a few minutes, and we're going to talk about summer schedules.
Which
because
are stressful.
In some way or another, I think everybody I know has had some form of a meltdown about the summer schedule
Yeah.
in some way. And it's lots of different things for different people,
Right,
but
right.
there's something to get upset. It's change.
It's change, and change is hard. And change is hard for kids on the spectrum.
And
it's
don't
hard
you
for our
think it's
pa-
harder in our community, and I didn't mean to interrupt you, but don't you think it's harder when everybody else is celebrating the change and you don't feel like celebrating the change,
Exactly.
and it just makes you like go,
Yeah, because it means that I have to schedule Wyatt for the summer to make sure he's busy.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't do Idle Hands or the Devil's Workshop.
Yes.
And he doesn't do well without schedule. Whereas some parents can let their kids just be,
Yeah.
their 15-year-old kids just go do their thing.
Yeah. Well, and I certainly have felt in the last 2 weeks, we've had more phone calls, I've had more emails, more people messaging me going, da, 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 and I'm stressed, and I feel the stress from all of them. And then, and you and I have encountered this, that at one point, you said, and I was like, no, I'm thrilled that it's
Yeah,
summer.
you're thrilled it's summer.
And I realized that I've crossed over into that place where I'm part of the problem now, because I'm like, but it's summer and it's so happy and whatever, and people want to have me killed. And I don't blame them. So
I wish I felt that way.
Vince is, well, and I want you to feel that way. I want everybody to feel that way. So Vince is going to try to help us sort through it. He's a licensed marriage and family therapist. And then we have Kurt Maneke, and I didn't bring the book in.
Okay.
We'll have to get that before. But he wrote the book Smile and Succeed he wrote this for neurotypical teens as a manual for, look, these are the old school things you got to do, like shake hands,
Right.
make eye contact,
lot of social
smile.
skills.
And he lines it all out in really simple language with cartoons about what's important. And he was on the show a couple of months to talk about it. But he wrote this for neurotypical kids, but it's the book that Temple Grandin got a hold of and said, every single one of our kids on the autism spectrum who's a teenager should get this book. So Kurt went back and he wrote the parent companion manual so that when you give the kid their book to them as a gift, then you've got the manual to follow along and do the lessons with them. So I think that's great, and we're going to talk about that. That's
Okay.
later on today. But first, we got a bunch of in the news. You want to dive in?
Sure. Paramount has acquired the movie rights to Steve Silberman's science book, Neurotypes. And they've set it up with Lorne Michaels, which is Saturday Night Live producer, which is an interesting choice.
It is a very interesting
I
choice.
found the fact that they're making this into a movie an interesting choice. I think I don't quite see how it's going to play out, but I guess it's a whole historical thing.
I think it'll be really interesting, and I can envision that it's going to be a cast with some pretty big names, because it will. I would think in order to do it, they would have to have a bunch of people doing little vignettes about things that happen with autism over the years.
Right.
It'll be interesting to see who plays Canner. It'll be interesting to see who plays Asperger.
Right.
And it will be interesting to see. I mean, this was a pretty controversial book. And it got a lot of press two summers ago.
Yes, it did.
And there was a lot of discussion about it because Steve Silberman puts forth the idea that the amount of autism is not rising. These people have always been here with these genes. It's just that we weren't diagnosing it. And it's sort of the history of where Asperger's was and where autism was all these years ago. So I think, it's more awareness. I'll be interested to see. Very interesting choice to have Lorne Michaels and his company, which is Broadway Video production company, working on this. It'll be interesting.
Right. I agree.
I can envision a lot of Saturday Night Live people in this movie. If that's the case, could be
Could
fascinating.
be.
Okay, so, and also looking at Netflix, last week we covered the fact that there was a TV show coming that has a doctor that's on the autism spectrum. This week we're hearing from Netflix that they've got a new show coming out featuring a teenager who is on the autism spectrum, and the title of it, Atypical.
Right.
You were mentioning during the break that that's the title of a book that a friend
of ours, Jesse Saperstein, who we've had on the show, wrote a book called Atypical about his life with autism.
And he's on the autism,
Yes, he is. So, but this is Netflix, and so it seems like there's just a lot of autism in the media.
Plethora.
And this is a coming of age story in a new direction. And it talks about his point of view, and it's a comedy really, because there's a lot of comic elements in it.
But what's very interesting is that the main character, the point of view, comes from the teenager who's on the autism spectrum.
Yes.
I will be interested to see how they deal with this. The 18-year-old who is playing Sam, the main character, is not on the spectrum, but he's going to be portraying him, and will. August 11th. It'll be available on Netflix, and I'll be very interested to see it and see whether it's something appropriate for my teenager to watch.
And he plays a high school senior, and it deals with things like dating and social relationships and all kinds of things.
But from the point of view of somebody who's on the spectrum, which I can imagine that there is fodder for comedy there, because a lot of the things that happen socially that are normal are ridiculous.
Yes, exactly.
So we'll be interested to take a look at that. Okay, new study about this one. I file under the duh heard around the world.
Right.
New study about eye contact that says that it's not just that people with autism don't like making eye contact, it's uncomfortable to the point of being painful to them. Duh.
They said it feels like burning.
Did we not know that?
I think we knew that it was uncomfortable, but I don't think this is a research study that really goes into exactly why that is.
And how in the brain and what the reaction is and so on and so forth. But I and I always appreciate research, and we all learn from it, and it stacks up and we go, oh, there's preponderance of evidence that shows that whatever. It's just that for those of us who have kids on the spectrum, I mean, that was the thing that I wanted to know when Jem was 3 is why doesn't he want to make eye contact? And it wasn't just that he didn't want to, that he physically couldn't.
Right.
And that it was, I could, the only evidence that I had before he lost language that something was going on was I breastfed him. And he, they tell you to sit with your baby and get them to latch on and make eye contact. Well, he wasn't breastfeeding, and we couldn't figure out why. Well, when I would make eye contact with him, he couldn't breastfeed and make eye contact at the same time. He made beautiful eye contact, and we would make eye contact every other time, but he couldn't breastfeed and make eye contact. And I said, it's too much for him. I could tell that it was too much. That it was like eye contact was so powerful. And I've talked to so many adults who are on the autism spectrum and said, what's the deal with the eye contact? And they said, it's personal. It's private. It's like being undressed in public, that it can feel like you're being burned. Have you ever, there are times where I've felt you make eye contact with somebody and it's like, it's a thing, right?
You feel like you have to look away.
Right, because it's intense. I can say this, that the first time I ever felt that was with Bono.
Really?
Bono made eye contact with me, and I was like...
And where was this? This is an interesting story.
I got to meet Bono when I was very young. I have a glove signed by him. That's a whole other.
Wow.
That's a whole other story. But the first time I felt that was with Bono, and I was like, whoa. And I know people
because it was so intense for you to make eye contact with Bono.
Oh, he's a pretty intense guy.
Yeah.
And I know other people that have said, oh yeah, no, they had that reaction with him.
Really?
He's pretty intense.
Really?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, I think it's probably like that when you meet. The reason why he's so famous is his personality.
Right.
It's not just contained. It goes, there are people who are intense.
Yeah.
And then, when I was a little bit older, I've had that reaction with other people, but you learn to sort of mitigate it.
Right.
But I was probably 18 when I met Bono, and I was like, what was that?
Okay.
It was like being hit by a truck. But, you know, the man has sold a lot of records. Anyway, we're out of time. But check this out. It's a study about eye contact. I don't even know. It's the University, Massachusetts General Hospital. And
it was published in Scientific Reports.
There you go. So check that out. But I want to have just a second here to talk about this story, because this story was in the New York Times and it really got me excited.
Right. For children, it's the headline is "For Children with Autism, No More Being Hushed."
Right, which I thought was a little bit misleading once you get into the article, but it's about Dorothy Siegel, who is a 70-year-old special education advocate who has been on the ground in New York City saying, get rid of the one-on-one aids. Now, you hear that and you go, what? Why are you but it's not that she wants to get rid of the help and support. What she's saying is that these people aren't trained to actually help these kids, that a lot of times what they're doing, and we've all experienced this, that there's a person next to your kid going, look at the teacher, which is not all that effective. Let's be honest. If they're not trained well, aides aren't going to do well. And her supposition is, if that person takes a whole salary, if we get rid of that person and put a trained, certified, capable teacher who understands behavior, how much have we been singing this song here on that show? So now we've got 2 teachers, we lower the class level, we've got 2 teachers who know how to educate less kids to deal with. Can we get that kid more involved in the environment? And the answer was yes.
And it's a program called ASD Nest, and it's now in 39 elementary, middle, and high schools in New York City.
And I am so looking forward to reaching out to Ms. Siegel to see if we can get her on the show, because I think this is right on the money.
And her inspiration was Temple Grandin's Thinking in Pictures.
Thank you very much. So definitely something to look at. Article in the New York Times, but we're going to see if we can get Ms. Siegel on the show in the coming weeks for our Autism in the Classroom, because that's exactly what I'm talking about. Okay, so we got to hurry and get to a commercial so we can get back with Vince Redmond, licensed marriage and family therapist, and he's going to be talking with us about the dreaded summer schedule. Stick with us.
What is autism? What is autism?
What is autism?
What is autism?
What is autism?
What is autism?
I've been asking myself that for a very, very long time.
Let me think about that one.
Trying to,
Jeez. Let me think. Oh man, that's a rough one. Yes.
Autism is a neurological disorder that affects many of our kids in different ways.
It's a learning disability that affects the cognitive functions of the brain.
A lot of people have the misconception that it's a disability, and it's really not.
I look at it as like a special gift.
When one person thinks differently from another.
It's an opportunity for everyone to learn to understand someone that's a little different than them. Autism is the ability to educate.
They're given so much talent in different areas.
To me, autism means a chance to be with and be around people you really care about. Autism is beautiful.
It's a way of seeing the world differently.
It's always unique, totally intelligent, and sometimes mysterious.
Happiness that comes out of my son's hard work.
It's a movement.
Unpredictable.
That's right.
Awesome. Love.
The field I want to work in.
Laughter, fun, joy. Autism is beautiful to me.
I want you to remember these 3 words. There is hope.
Hello, fellow activists. Last week, I introduced you to step 5 of the 10 steps to empowerment, shore up spiritually. Let's talk more about finding ways to do that, how to find out what lifts your spirit, feeds your soul, and make it a practice. That practice is different things for different people. It could be the practice of meditation, of prayer, of community worship, or serving others. But it's the practice that will give you hope and faith and strength for the journey ahead, for the marathon journey of raising a child with autism. I get inspired every day by the families of children with autism that I come into contact with, like the parents of the nonverbal child who have not given up hope that that child will speak one day, or the grandparents who should be enjoying their retirement but instead are joyfully raising their adult grandchild with autism, or the mother who is fighting for services for her daughter while her Marine husband is fighting a battle to keep our country safe. They all inspire me. My grandmother, Diddy, who is an angel who still guides me every day, had this quote inscribed in her Bible. I sought my soul, but my soul I could not see. I sought my God, but my God eluded me. I sought my brother, and I found all three. I think I'm finally starting to grasp the meaning of that. So feed your soul, lift your spirit, and until next time, keep the faith.
We're back. We're back with, as we promised, Vince Redmond, who is going to help us work through the maze of summer scheduling and the stress it causes. Hi, Vince. How are you?
Hi. Good. How's everyone?
There
Good.
you are. I just want to say, because Vince is so particularly fabulous, I want to remind everybody, if you haven't seen him before, that Vince began his career as a therapist, working in the field with kiddos that were on the autism spectrum, and he did that for multiple decades, and is now a licensed marriage and family therapist, helping all of us to understand all the feelings and the challenges that go along with. He's uniquely qualified to be able to do that, because having been on the other side of the equation. So Vince, we welcome you back, and we apologize to you because it's been several months since we've had you on the show, and that's all our fault and none of yours. But we've missed you.
I did give one up for you.
You did.
I'll give that one to Corey.
That you did. When we had Corey Feldman on, we were going to have
Vince
Vince on, and Vince said, I have a feeling, because Vince sees things that we don't.
Right.
And Vince wrote to me and he said, I have a feeling you have other things to do that morning. Can you imagine, looking back, if we had still tried to do the full LTA?
No.
Vince, you may have saved us all from sanity. Insanity. But anyway, we don't want to take any more of your time talking about that. You're just a great guy and always willing to take one for the team. So talk to us about summer, because everybody has been stressed, and it's from lots of different things, whether their schedule got changed, whether they got therapists coming or going, whether it's figuring out what their child is doing when they're not in therapy. It's for some reason this time it has felt worse for a lot of people, I think.
Yeah, and I think it's a combination of multiple things. I mean, the first thing is summer, and we know that change, is just a natural progression when it comes into summer. And anytime there's change, just us as human beings, anyone gets nervous, they get anxious with change. Even though it could be positive change, we still just have this innate ability to get anxious about change. Then when we add change that involves things that we have no control over, loss of therapist, maybe a switch of an office, maybe there's some problems with funding sources, what have you, then that becomes even more anxiety producing because it's out of our control. And I know a lot of families, we're already anxious enough. There's already a lot of unpredictability in their lives. And when these types of changes come up, it just adds to it. So what we really propose is, working together, communicating, really being open with each other, the provider to family and family to provider on, what are their anxieties, what are their fears, what are their concerns, what are their frustrations, so that everyone understands what's under control, either through the family or control through the vendor, on what we can do to make that change, a little more palatable for everyone.
What about our kids? How can we make the change more palatable for them? They get out of school, and depending, of course, on the individual situation, some of them might be in summer school, extended school year. Some of them might be going to camps. Then they also have therapy. How can we set them up if they're particularly anxious about change?
And you kind of hit on it a little bit. It's establish a routine for them, right? It's a new routine, but you do want to establish a routine, either if it is going to camp 3, 4, 5 days a week, is it summer school where they're going to school from 9 to 12. Try to establish some type of scheduled routine for them. I know depending on level of comfort, anxiety, and functionality of the child, you can have schedules. Either it be a visual schedule, it could be just a regular schedule, it could be something of just a routine schedule that the kids are involved in, where They go to school, they come home, then they have play dates, then they, have to, maybe a little screen time, have snacks, what have you. Or they go to camp, if we need visual schedules. The whole idea, though, is try to establish some type of a routine so that the kids have something to predict. This will lower their anxieties. Our kids have a very difficult time predicting the future. They have a hard time understanding what's going to come next. The more we can make that routine for them, even though it's a different routine than the spring, right, when they're in school, it will establish lower anxiety and probably better results.
And then there's also the vacations, which can cause stress because of travel stress, right?
Mm-hmm. True. And again, depending on the level of child, we want to talk to the child about this ahead of time, right? Again, establish it in the schedule. Talk about it. Let's not wait till the last minute and say, okay, let's start packing. Hey, guess what? We're going to Disney World. That's way too much to process, way too much to understand. And our kids are they need those comforts. They need those, they're creatures of habit, right? They need those routines. So we have to start giving them time to process what's going to change. So if there's a vacation coming, we should start talking about it immediately as summer starts. Just on July 4th, we're going to go to Disney World. We're going to take a plane, and just continue to talk about it so that when the date arrives, the child's not going to be surprised. They're not going to be scared. They still might be a little anxious, but now it's a little bit more, appropriate, and they'll be able to cope with it a lot better.
My son gets particularly anxious about traveling on planes now. He used to not, but it's something that's come up in the last couple of years. He doesn't like long flights. How could I help with that situation?
Do any of us like long flights?
No, you're right. And do any of us like airports these days?
No.
I'm sitting here thinking, because I do a lot of travel as well. I'm like, I don't like it either. I think the biggest thing that we could do with our kids is finding out where their anxieties are coming from. Is it just that they're bored and this is, they're kind of caught in a capsule and they just have nothing to do? Is it noise? Is there a lot of sensitivity to the loud noises of being in an airport, hearing the planes, those kind of things? And then we can come up with solutions on how to do it. The noise deafening earphones work great for a lot of kids. Making sure that we have I would say a plethora of different things that they could do while they're on the plane, not just one thing. I think a lot of times we get very focused on, just give them the iPad to watch movies. That might last an hour or two, but if you're going by coastal, there's 3 more hours that we need to fill time. So bringing multiple things that they would enjoy, multiple things that would keep them occupied, so that we can continue to change things up so that their interest stays on different tasks and less about being on a plane. I know the best advice I ever got as a parent myself was when I had a very young child, was taking her on a plane. And the advice to me was, go to the 99-cent store, spend $20 and just get 20 or more different little cheap little toys and things that they would be interested in. Put them in a bag, and every hour they could reach in and pick something new. And it worked like a charm, because it was just like this treasure chest of unknown happy gifts, and every time they got something, they played with it, and she was occupied for a good amount of time, and then we built in the music and videos and snacks and that kind of stuff as well. So keeping them occupied is essential.
I agree. I think that's a great idea. I want to talk a little bit about resentment.
Okay.
That I think part of what I've seen and that I've experienced is that summer for most of us is this, idyllic time. We have a perfect memory of a summer, and everybody goes, oh, it's summer, and I'm going to go on this vacation, and I'm going to go to Disneyland. And I can hear the autism mom that goes, oh, that must be nice for you.
Right.
I can't even go to Disneyland, whether it's money because of autism or because I can't get my kid to behave. And we get into this comparison thing of, you don't understand how different my life is from yours.
I think that's so true. And I have to admit feeling resentment sometimes when I look at other families.
And I have in the past, I still sometimes do, about, people who are able to give, the experience of going to 7 camps and paying thousands of dollars for them, and I'm like, oh, well, that must be nice, But I think we all do it to some extent, and I think
the comparison thing.
And I think we do it more as autism parents. And I think for some reason, the summer, with all the changes that come, it tends to really rear its ugly head. So Vince, what do we do for resentment? What's productive?
Take a deep breath. There's our first step, right? Deep breath. I think is part of what you're saying is very natural. We always compare ourselves to other people. I mean, it just as humans we do, right? She's better looking, he's taller, he weighs less than I do, whatever it may be. And then us as parents, we do the same thing when we look at our children. We look at our abilities to enjoy the family, and that's what we want to focus on, and that's what you guys want to focus on. Any family that's going on a vacation, it's not about the destination, it's about the memories, the enjoyment, the desires that we're having. And if it's just spending time at a park, or it's spending a weekend at the beach, or it's something that could just we're going to go to a new place in our general vicinities once a week to maybe a museum, or maybe a different restaurant or a different park or what have you. So that again, it's looking at the enjoyment, it's focusing on the enjoyment, it's focusing on everybody being able to have a good time, not comparing good time to good time, because when it comes down to it, joy and happiness and enjoyment are all something that you can feel in love and in experience with your family, no matter where you go.
So get in the moment is what I'm hearing you say. Think about what you can do versus what you can't do or what somebody else is doing. Focus on what you can do and actually do something, but get in the present.
And something to make you happy, right? Going to Florida is not the only thing that makes you happy. Right.
There have been plenty of times that I look back on a memory and I was fatoutzed at the time, and my pants didn't fit right, or I didn't like the way my hair was or whatever in the moment, and I was crabby. But later on I look back and I go, that was a great time.
Right.
Why can't this be like that? I have a very hard time being in the moment, which is why we do the mindfulness thing on Thursdays. But looking for the joy wherever we can find it is what I'm hearing from you, Vince.
Yeah, and then creating some of it too. Just because we have more constraints because we have treatment and therapies and other things that the kids can do, doesn't mean we can't plan activities. Doesn't mean we can't plan vacations. It's just doing it within our means, but also within what's going to make everyone, where are we going to get the most enjoyment out of it, right? Going on a plane might be actually the worst thing to do because it's going to create a lot of anxiety, fear, and panic. Maybe it's just a car ride. Maybe it is going to the beach more often. There's lots of things that each individual family can do that, if planned out, can be extremely successful.
And what about reaching out to our team and asking for help if there's something like a plane ride that's coming up, and saying to them, what can we do? Because the team can help with that, can't they?
Absolutely. The team wants to help with that. Again, the parents are part of the team, right? Everyone's a team member on the team. So we want the parents and the supervisor to discuss this ahead of time, again, to problem solve, come up with an action plan on what's going to be the best result to decrease any anxieties that the child might have, and to decrease the anxieties that the family might have. And to do this ahead of time, I think is essential, because then we're going to get a lot of advice, be able to plan accordingly, be able to utilize that advice, so that when it actually is time, everything can be applied, and hopefully, everything will be successful.
And we've only got a little less than a minute left, Vince, but if you could really quickly address, for people, this is the time of year where the schedule changed for a lot of people getting ABA because the therapist schedules changed. And as you said, some people are having their offices moved and things, and that brings up a lot of anxiety. What can you give for those people to hang on to when that happens?
I think the essential thing, and I know we're working on it on our end as well, is the communication with the families. A lot of times there's things and there's changes that are outside of our control. Either a therapist leaves, they change their availability, they limit where they can work, those types of things. And so it's much more difficult for us to always be able to give what families' requests are, either it be about a certain therapist, certain time frames, and so forth. So we do our very best to adhere to what families are asking for. However, there are a lot of things that also come up in the families. Situations that are not under their control. Maybe there's therapies that change, other therapies that change, or summer school that changes. So working together, really staying communicative, I think is essential. I know our offices are working hard to do that, as well as I know a lot of the families are, but as long as we're communicating, being transparent and open with each other, I think that reduces frustrations.
Yeah, and it's not always going to go right, and it's not always going to go smoothly, but I
Right.
wish if there was one gift that I could give everyone, it would be the front-loaded knowledge that it's all going to be okay in the end. I wish I could go back in time and tell the mom that I was in the first year of therapy, it's all going to be okay.
Right.
Worry less about every little change. Keep focusing on the big picture. Keep swimming. Don't keep getting upset about all these little things that you feel like you're totally justified being upset about, but in the end don't really add up to a hill of beans. But
that's
it's
true.
anxiety.
It's true. It's extra anxiety that we're all feeling. That I think it's hurting ourselves more than anything else.
It's hard to know. It's like that book, Don't Sweat the Small Stuff.
Yeah.
But when you're an autism parent, you don't know what the small stuff is.
Everything seems big.
It all seems big.
Yeah.
Seems big. And that's where we have that step back. I mean, we have the years of experience where we can look back and see that it is okay, that things will work out, that, because we lost our favorite therapist doesn't mean that, our child isn't going to continue to progress.
Yeah.
And it's true, because they're living in the here and now. I mean, they're living in, any change could potentially, in their eyes be detrimental. And being able to talk about that, being able to express that, and that's one thing I would ask the families is to express those concerns, express those fears. I'm afraid that ... So then this way the clinicians and the administrators really understand where everyone's coming from.
Vince, as always, you are a breath of fresh air and help us to get on an even keel. We appreciate you so much. Take just a second here to tell folks what services you provide at CARD and how they can get a hold of you.
They can get a hold of me at any time at my email address, and I don't know if they're going to pop it up there, but it's v.redmond, REDMOND, at centerforautism.com. And we provide, again, counseling services for families. We, just consultations with families. We provide resources for families. Again, discussing with families any concerns that they might have in regards to care and treatment. So really, we're there as a resource and services for all the families throughout the organization.
And Vince is fabulous. If you need him, reach out to him. He's really amazing. We thank you so much.
Thank you, ladies.
Have a pleasant beginning of summer, and we'll talk to you very soon.
Okay.
A couple
You
weeks.
too. Take care.
Okay.
Bye-bye, Vince. All right, we're going to take a break. We're running a little bit late, and we're going to get Kurt Manicky on the phone so that we can talk on Skype so that we can talk about his new parent guide that goes along with his book, Smile and Succeed for Teens. We'll be right back. Hi, I'm Shannon Penrod, and we're at the ABCs and XYZs of Special Needs Conference. And this year, for the first time, they've got something really remarkable. It's the Entrepreneurial Boutique. These are all items that have been made and are being sold by individuals who have special needs. So we're going to do a little shopping and talk to some of these fabulous entrepreneurs. Come on.
My name is Molly Rarick, and I'm founder of Breed's Gift. We're a nonprofit that serves teens and adults with special needs, like Chase here. We were founded in 2013 and serve people in the Conejo Valley, Santa Barbara, and LA.
Our main objective is to give our participants the skills they need to gain a more independent life.
My name is Shelley Cox, and Lisa Zalagi and I are founders of Creative Steps and Create Micro Business Enterprises. And the items that we're selling here today are all made by the clients who have passions about what they want to make, and then they get the profits from what they make after we've paid all of the other expenses.
We are here today because my goal is to be independent, and also I would like to share all my artwork, and I would like to sell.
Thinking about at his young age being a businessman, it's amazing. I cannot be more proud.
Welcome back to Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
You always bring us back, and I don't know why
Do I always bring us back?
Well, I try to let you because I have time to do the other.
All right.
But in any case, stepping on her toes. I don't dance well. So Nancy's a much better dancer than I am. In any case, we're really excited because if you watch the show a couple of months ago, we had Kurt Manneke on to talk about Smile and Succeed for Teens, a great book that he had put out. And Kurt is someone who has an extensive career in sales, marketing, and fundraising, and business development. And what he did was take all the good skills that he knows that make somebody successful, and he put it together in this book, Smile and Succeed for Teens, to talk about those old world skills, personal, social skills, we call them now, that make you successful. He put together that book for teens, and it was for neurotypical teens. But Temple Grandin found it, Dr. Temple Grandin, and said, this is a great book for
all kids.
All kids, including our kids that are on the autism spectrum. And when Kurt was with us last time, he was promising us that he was going to come out with a companion parent guide to go with the book. So you give the book to your teenager, you've got the companion guide, so that your child is reading things, you get sort of a synopsis of it, and then an exercise to do with them afterwards. It gives all of us the power to be a teacher. So Kurt has now done that. That's what I'm holding in my hands here, this wonderful book. This is the Parent's Guide, which is great. So Kurt, I've talked so much now, but Kurt, we welcome you back to the show, and congratulations for getting it done.
Thank you, Shannon. Thank you, Nancy. Thank you for having me back.
Yes, and Shannon kind of went over in some ways why you did the Parent's Guide, but tell us from your perspective why you wrote it.
Well, it was funny because I never even thought about it, and Psych Central did an online review of the book, Smile and Succeed for Teens, and they said, it's a great book, but we can't expect all teens to do everything in the book. They said a parent's guide would be really helpful. So I thought, do I really want to write another book? Because it's a lot of work, as you know. So I was at a Future Horizons conference. They have Temple Grandin speaking, and they sell my books. So I was at the table, and I asked a number of parents, I said, would a parent's guide be helpful? And I had a little mock-up with me. And they all wanted to buy the mock-up. And I said, why would you want a parent's guide? And they said, well, it would make it really easy for us to help our kids without having to dig through the book. You'd have all the questions there ready for us. And after a number of parents said that, I thought, you know what, let me just go ahead and do that. So that was really the reason why. And I think it's helpful for parents to, roll with their kids. So the first time they try the skills is not in front of a customer. We used to do that when I had a retail store. We do a lot of role playing before the kids got into the real world.
Well, and you just brought up the job interview, and we want to know, tell us about your mock job interview and why you think it's so important.
That's a great question. The mock job interview is really important because if you send any teen or young adult into a job interview and they haven't role played this before, you're really setting them up for failure. So with the mock job interview, and I have it here, I'll look through it. With the mock job interview, you can actually ask them some common questions such as, tell me about yourself. Or this other one, why do you want to work here? You know, these common interview questions, which sometimes are not that effective at really hiring a good employee, but unfortunately, they're the questions that a lot of people still use today. So if you role play these skills with your son or your daughter and get them comfortable with them, then when they go into the interview, two things will happen. They'll have a little more confidence, they'll feel more comfortable, and they'll do a better job. They'll have a better chance at actually getting hired. They'll know the honest answers to give the interviewer.
Yeah, I just think this is all so smart, Kurt, because for us, and Nancy and I were talking about this earlier, we had Joanne Lara on the show, who is the head of Autism Works now, and she is working.
Yes, I know who she is. Yes.
Yeah, she's working with adults who are on the autism spectrum to help give them skills. And one of the things that she said on the show recently, and I thought of you, Kurt, was that she said, unfortunately, with neurotypical kids, people go up to them when they're little and go, what job do you want to have? What do you want to be when you grow up, honey? And that's what they ask them. But for kids who are different, a lot of times they just say, well, aren't you cute, or aren't you smart, or aren't you whatever, and don't ask them those kinds of questions. So Joanne's having to do this kind of thing with adults. And she says, we got to start much earlier. We got to start when they're 3. But absolutely, these teen years, where a lot of us don't know what to do. Our kids are on the spectrum, and we don't know where to start. And you've given us the manual.
How can it help those parents of kids with autism?
And that's a great question too. And let me back up just one second. And this is really for teens, tweens, and young adults, so it's very good for any age. I actually took the teaching guide that I had and took 4 months and transferred some of the information to the parents guide. But as far as helping kids with autism, there's a whole section on overcoming stress, which is really important. It gives them some things that they may have thought of. There's a whole section on creating your own job. If, maybe mowing the lawns or helping organize garage sales, there's different things kids can do that they may not have thought of. But most importantly, a parent can role play a lot of these important skills with their son or daughter, just like I did when I had our retail store. You role play, for instance, in the book, a customer walks into your store. What do you do? Or a customer walks into your store, you're already with another customer and you're the only one on the sales floor. What do? You know to ignore that person. You say, hi, how are you? I'll be with you in a minute. Or when somebody walks in your store, it teaches them to smile and say hello and greet that customer and have a warm smile. And that's so critical. I was just in 2 stores Sunday. One just opened up. They totally ignored the customers that were walking in. So you have to create a powerful first impression. And there are a lot of job role-playing skills in this parents guide to prepare the individual with autism for success, so the employer's happy and the customers are happy.
See, this is one of the many reasons why I love Kurt, because Kurt is an expert in customer service, and I'm all about good customer service. I can't stand bad customer service. And
I'm the same.
Right? And this is why you speak my language, Kurt.
Tell us about the how to be a mystery shopper worksheet.
That's a really fun exercise. And when I was helping some kids at the local Northville Farmers Market through Living and Learning, it's a great center in Northville for helping kids with job skills. They asked me to come, and I was trying to help the kids with greeting customers that were coming up to the farm market table. And a special education teacher, who's much smarter than I am, said, why don't you just take them around, walk them around, and show them bad examples of people on their cell phones that aren't greeting customers and good examples. So we did that. And the mystery shopper experience is the same thing. They actually learn the skills in Smile and Succeed for Teens, practice them with their parents, but then they can take the mystery shopper sheet, go into a restaurant or a store, maybe with their family or on their own, and notice, did that person smile and say hello as soon as we walked in? How did they engage us? Were they friendly? Were they helpful? There's a number of items in this, and it's kind of a fun exercise, but it really gives the teen or tween or young adult the chance to see good customer service, and then talk with their parents when they come back and discuss ways that the restaurant or service business or any other type of business could have used some of the skills in the book to be better. Did they say please and thank you? Were their electronics off? Did that salesperson make good eye contact with them? And I'm reading some things right from the book. Did they acknowledge new people when they walked in, maybe right at the front of the restaurant, or did they ignore them? So a lot of things that they'll notice will help them see in the real world how these skills are critical. I mean, these are the soft skills. They're the number one skill that employers look for when hiring, and that's right. That's according to Harvard University.
And so what's your hope then for how this will help individuals who are on the autism spectrum to get and keep a job?
My hope is that they learn the skills which are soft skills, and they learn these little skills that maybe people don't think are that important. They're not technical skills. They're just soft skills. They're the social skills. And that employer says, boy, I want to keep this kid around forever, and the customers are happy. And I'll give you a quick story. A friend of mine, he lives in Indiana, and his son read the book. And Rick told me his son is the only employee at the men's clothing store that the owner said to him, you can set your own schedule. You can come back every year because you treat customers exactly how we want them treated. Yeah. And that's what I'm talking about. If the kids can master some of these skills, they don't have to master all of them. It's just some of them. They will be the best employee. Because I tell you what, I go in a lot of these businesses where kids are working. I don't blame the kids. The store didn't train them, or the business didn't train them. The parents haven't trained them. They just threw them right on the sales floor, or in the grocery store without any training. They're shy. I was at that age. So if you train them, they'll be so much better than a lot of the neurotypical kids that are out there. Because I'll tell you what, as you know, Shannon, you and I do speak the same language. It's really bad out there.
It is bad out there.
It's terrible.
And this is a way that we can give our kids a leg up. I want to tell just a brief story in the grocery store that is by us since before my son was born. There is a young man who started working there who has Down syndrome. Mm-hmm. And clearly our kids and kids with different abilities, I will say this, one of the things that they tend to be, not all kids, but they are rule governed.
Right.
And this young man, I think it was his grandmother who taught him day in and day out the rules of good customer service. So when he was 16 years old, he got a job at our grocery store, and he was rule governed, and that he had to say hello to everybody, mm-hmm. and he was Mr. Polite, and everyone loved coming to the grocery store and interacting with him. And he continued to learn the rules of the store. He's the assistant manager of our store now.
Really?
And it's because he knew these skills, that he is a very treasured employee there, and he is the assistant manager. And I think that these are the skills that are super duper important. And I think that the parents guide, what I love is that the Smile and Succeed for Teens, it's got a lot of drawings in it and cartoons, right, and things that makes it really easy for them to understand. But then you get the parents guide, and as you said, it prevents us from having to read verbatim word for word and then come up with questions, because I don't have the time or energy. Mm-hmm. And I love that I mentioned to you during a break, Kurt, that I gave the book, the first book, to my son, and I said, pick a topic. And he wanted to read about stress. Uh-huh. And then he was reading all of it, and we were having a conversation. And then I went to the parents guide, and it had this wonderful checklist for me to talk about with him about, do you use these techniques? Have you tried them? Are you willing to try them? And we both did it. And it was really fascinating to me, because Jem was saying to me, when we got to one where one of the suggestions you make is you can use humor to help with stress. And my son started to laugh, and he said, well, Mom, you definitely do that one. It's like, you're queen of that one. But we talked about, does it work? And he said, well, in some certain circumstances that it does. But then we talked about which circumstances other one. It was a great conversation.
That is so nice to hear. I use some of those skills. I was thinking a couple of days ago, I was a little stressed out. I was overworked, and I thought of the Parents Guide. I thought, okay, just, have a good sense of humor. You can laugh at life a little bit. I love your story. That you gave me chills with the story about the gentleman at the grocery store. And that's what I'm talking about. When you say thank you, the employee will learn from the Parents Guide and the book to say you're welcome. Not yeah, not no problem, not have a good one, which happened to me just 2 days ago at the pizza place. I said thank you. The kid behind the counter, have a good one. That's not going to bring anybody back. You want to say you're welcome. So exactly what you said, the old-fashioned skills, and that's what I'm talking about. It's nothing really that technical. It's pretty easy, pretty simple stuff.
And I think anytime we have an opportunity to give our kids a leg up, then they have a wonderful leg up. I think one of the things that individuals who have autism, they tend to be the politest people I have ever met. And you know why? Because they're rule governed. Right. And the rule was given to them, you must be polite and you must. So why not give them even more of those rules in a very fun format, so that when they're going to the job interview, what if our kids were at the front of the line instead of the back of the line? Yes. And I think this has the ability to help us to do that.
Thank you. I that's why I wrote it. I really thought, let's give these kids, like you said, a leg up, and let's quit throwing them into these situations where any kid, neurotypical or with autism, is prone to fail. Adults too. If you don't practice this, chances are you're not going to really shine during that interview. And the other thing that's in here that a lot of parents like is the social media etiquette.
I was just going to ask you about the social media, because you devote a chapter to that.
Yeah, so that's really important. I see this all the time. I look at a lot of Facebook pages, and people put the teens in charge of their business Facebook page. They'll say, "Oh, social media, can you be in charge of the page?" And you'll see these customers comment, and they'll say, "Oh, I'd like to buy that wedding dress you have. Do you have it in stock?" And there'll be no comment back. There'll be no thank you. So these kids, or it'll be really bad grammar, there'll be a lot of misspellings. So this teaches them how to effectively write an email, how to effectively write a text message, how to reply in social media, and a lot of social media etiquette as far as always be nice, don't waste your life on the electronics. There's a whole chart in there on social media etiquette, kind of a fun chart with little screens on it. So
I've got it right here. And Nancy and I were looking at this beforehand because I'm thinking about a story in the news recently of a bunch of kids that got accepted to, I think it was Harvard, and that they posted some things on social media, and now they have been disinvited to Harvard.
That's right.
And I'm sure that their parents wish that they had given this sheet to those kids. Can you imagine what they must have done to get their kids to the point where Harvard accepted them, and they're out over a Facebook post?
Right.
A really horrible Facebook post. So more things are wrong than just this, but this would have helped. But this is really useful for everyone, and I think it's great for our kids that are on the autism spectrum.
That's useful for adults too.
I think that there's one here that you can see: don't post when you're angry. I wish I could give a whole lot of people that.
Yes, that especially in today's environment.
Right. There's so many things in here that are really, really useful. So now tell our parents, where can they get this?
Oh, you can either go to my website, www.smilethebook.com, or both the Parents Guide for Smile and Succeed for Teens and the book Smile and Succeed for Teens are available on Amazon. If you want to buy both, what I don't want people to do is buy the Parents Guide and get disappointed. You need to use the Parents Guide, you also need the book Smile and Succeed for Teens. They work in conjunction.
A very good point, but it's a great thing to be doing this summer. Get both of them, give the one to your teen, have the Parents Guide for yourself. I also want to point out that one of the things you say about the Master Your Electronic Etiquette is creating a contract with your teen about their cell phone, and you give a link to be able to download one for free. There's so many great things in here. You've done a really great job, and we're thrilled to have you here with us to share this with our parents.
Thank you so much, Shannon and Nancy. It was a pleasure to talk to you again.
Well, we can't wait to see what you come out with next, Kurt.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Shannon. Thank you, Nancy.
Thank you for being on, Kurt.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
So I know you're working on this already with Jem, and I was saying that I thought it was a little bit above Wyatt's head, but you disagreed with me. And
well, and you were just looking at the parents' guide,
right?
And you were not looking at the teens' guide,
No.
And so and he's right. You do have to have both to look at, but I didn't have that to give Nancy because it's in Jem's hands.
Okay.
But I'll bring that back so that you can see.
Okay.
Because
maybe see if there are some things that I think he could work on. I thought a lot of it was a little too sophisticated for him.
But and here's the thing, these are the kinds of books you don't have to do them in order. I like the way that I said to Jem, pick the subject that you want to read about. The first thing that he read about was the power of a smile. And there was a section where, and he and I did the exercise together, and we did this in the car, where Kurt asks you to say something that, what's an example of something that would be that you're excited about something. And he says, try to say it with a sour face, like, Jem, you're really good at that.
Right.
And how hard it is, and it doesn't feel right, and it doesn't look right. But then say it with a smile and saying, Jem, you're really good at that. And how different it feels. And Jem and I both did it, and he said, boy, it really does feel different. And we can do that with with anyone. We can do that with very young kids. We can, and the power of a smile, and that even if you don't make eye contact, if you smile at someone, it goes a long way. So he does talk about things like eye contact in here. And I do think it's important for our kids to know, for the longest time, we would say to Jem, you've got to make eye contact. Well, why? I mean, he was like, why would I have to do that? And then one day, when he was a little bit older, I couldn't have explained this to him when he was 3, but we were still asking him to make eye contact at 3. When he was like 6, I said to him, the truth is you don't have to make eye contact. You absolutely don't, which he knew to be true. And I said, but people think that you don't like them when you don't make eye contact, or they think you're lying or you're hiding something. And he was like, they do? Why would they? That's crazy. And I was like, it doesn't have to make sense. It just is. And I gave him the experiment. I said, try seeing what happens when you look somebody in the eye, when you say something, and see what the reaction is. Well, that he was willing to do. And he saw that he got a better reaction. He still doesn't make perfect eye contact. Well, I don't.
Yeah. Right.
Right. And we're not looking for perfect. We're looking for them being able to do the things that they want to do. And as you and I were saying before, I was saying, sometimes our kids see, I'm trying, but I'm not getting the reaction that I want.
Right.
And they don't know why, and it's frustrating. I remember going to my 50th birthday party and my son laying on the floor of my friend's foyer and saying, crying and saying, why won't they play with me? And my heart breaking for him, because he was with a group of people and he was trying to get them to play, and there was just one thing that wasn't working.
Right.
And he didn't care about what that one thing was. He just wanted them to play. I, as a parent, have to care about what that one thing is or what those 32 things are. So when people say, well, why do we have to do things, and change the way they are? I didn't want to change who my son was, but I wanted to take away the obstacles that were preventing him from getting what he wanted. He wanted those kids to play with him. I know he's going to want a job. And I know he's going to want to move up in that job. And we want them to be happy.
We do. That's what we want above all else, right?
Healthy and happy.
Now, I think we're almost out of time, so you tell us what's going to be on tomorrow.
Tomorrow, great show. We're having Dina Kimmel from We Rock the Spectrum on the show. She's talking about her new resource fair that's happening here in Los Angeles.
Right, and we're one of the beneficiaries today.
Wonderful. And we're also having Bonnie Yates, special education attorney, is going to be here with us as well. And then I think we have a surprise guest in the first hour as well that I can't confirm yet.
Oh, okay.
So there we have
Just
that.
have to stay tuned.
And I want to say that next week we are not here for Wednesday's show. In fact, you're away for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Actually, we're off of Wednesdays for 2 weeks after this week.
Okay.
Because then it's the 5th of July. And you're going to be away on the East
North
Coast.
Carolina and Virginia.
I'm going to be up north in California. But during that time, we're going to be playing. There's still going to be stuff playing on Facebook Live. You're going to see the best of Autism Live. Samantha's got it all lined up.
Oh,
so
great.
you guys are going to be able to see some things that you don't normally get to see. So don't go away, but just know that Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy won't be back until the week after the 4th of July.
Right, so we'll be on a little break, and we hope you guys have a wonderful summer, even with all the crazy scheduling.
And a good 4th of July.
Yeah,
but
good 4th
we're
of July.
still here tomorrow live. You don't want to
Yeah,
miss that.
right.
Until then, give your kiddos a hug from me.
And yourselves a hug from me.
Bye-bye
Bye-bye.
for now.